bitches go.
We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live, Boxing Ego Unpacked. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Yo, Oscar De La Hoya responds to Canelo Alvarez's recent comment and stands behind his Goldenboy promotion Matchmaker. What up, fight world? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also subscribe to the channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you want to become part of the gang digital mob, smash the like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. Very interesting stuff. You know, I probably should have started with Canelo Alvarez, but Canelo didn't mention what Goldenboy Matchmaker. I don't know if they have multiple. In my previous video, you guys got to subscribe so you can follow what's going on. But I speculated, you know, the matchmaker that I know of Roberto Diaz, and this is now confirmed by Oscar De La Hoya's tweet, who responded. You know what, let me start with Canelo. I want to start with Canelo so you guys know what he said in case you missed my past video. But you guys got to subscribe so, you know, you can know what's going on. Okay, Canelo Alvarez was stripped earlier this week of his title for failure to complete a deal by a deadline with Sergey Derevyanchenko, an Al Haymon advised fighter. This, in my opinion, is the second time that Canelo's lost a belt recently. The WBC got stripped, and the IBF, he said his goal was to be undisputed. So therefore, in my opinion, this is not a good look to be losing belts and not at your own bequest. Like, you're losing them because they're being taken from you, you know, because of failure to do X, Y, and Z. So Canelo, he spoke his frustrations to his verified social media, and he said, "I'm very upset and ashamed with my fans to be unfairly stripped of my belt by the IBF, but especially when I did not have the knowledge of the agreement that Goldenboy Promotions Matchmaker had signed." So in my previous video, I said that doesn't really make sense, almost an oxymoron. In one stanza, he's saying he's unfairly been stripped of the IBF and, you know, pleading with fans and making it sound like there was some kind of like unjust, unfair treatment. And then he's saying basically the Goldenboy, he threw Goldenboy promoter, which we now know is Robert Diaz, he threw him under the bus and said, especially when I didn't have knowledge of the agreement that Goldenboy promoter, the matchmaker, had signed. So it looks like trouble in paradise because Canelo, I mean, he's throwing some, when have you ever seen Canelo go against Goldenboy, where he's like throwing someone from Goldenboy under the bus? You know what I'm saying? These aren't good signs. I told you guys, new media, but before I get into that, let me read Oscar De La Hoya's response. Smash the like button. Oscar De La Hoya responded to this on his verified account. Obviously, he didn't tag Canelo or anything. And he says, "I stand behind every single one of my soldiers during battle." And then he tagged Robert Diaz. You know, this is him, as you guys can see on the side. He said, "Robert Diaz is the best matchmaker in the business. Goldenboy Boxing has been the best and top promoter for a reason. It's called loyalty, hard work, intelligence, and family." So I don't know what's going on, but this doesn't look good. This looks like some type of rift in the quote unquote family. If De La Hoya is saying this is loyalty and family, you know, it looks like, again, there's some type of rift between Canelo and certain people at Goldenboy, and then De La Hoya is publicly coming out and saying, "Yo, I stand by the people I appointed in Robert Diaz," like, you know, as if Robert Diaz didn't do anything wrong. And you know, this is just a bad look for Canelo. I think Canelo, you know, he's a big star in the sport. You know, De La Hoya is kind of pleading. He said, "Why do you think Floyd Mayweather and Pacquiao would never fight for the IBF?" You know, he's trying to stain the IBF's name. I think everyone at Goldenboy, you know, regarding Canelo, they're upset. They're upset because Canelo doesn't look good in this situation for a variety of reasons. And I've talked about it in this video, in previous videos. And it looks like De La Hoya he deleted one of his comments. But you guys, that's what, again, this is why you got to check my videos when they come up. De La Hoya also, actually, you know what? I think it was in his press release. In his press release, he talked about it. But Oscar De La Hoya basically he released a press release. You know, I have it in the email somewhere, so I have to find it. But it says statement from De La Hoya regarding the IBF's decision to strip Canelo. We are extremely disappointed at the IBF for forcing the world's best fighter to relinquish his title. We have been in serious negotiations with Sergey Derevyanchenko's promoter. We offered his team an unprecedented amount of money for a fighter of his limited stature and limited popularity. See, when people, since I've already talked about this, I want to chime in on that. Sergey Derevyanchenko is not the most well-known, renowned guy in the States. We know that. But his limited stature and limited popularity has nothing to do with rules, has nothing to do with being the mandatory. So, you know, some people, when they talk or when they write, in this case, they throw in a bunch of like unnecessary details that's really neither here nor there. The popularity, and this is what gets, to me, has gotten Canelo in trouble, because he's highly popular. He's the A-side, so he wants to kind of beat to the sound of his own drum and follow his own rules instead of following the rules. You get what I'm saying? So I think when De La Hoya said that, that has nothing to do with it. It says we offered an unprecedented amount of money to a fighter of his limited stature and limited popularity. Irregardless of that, that's Canelo's mandatory. Canelo's a champion. IBF has rules. You knew about the rules. Your team, Goldenboy, did not meet those deadlines and or reach out and request an exception, say, hey, we're fighting Andre, we're fighting Kovalev, etc. Therefore, he was stripped by not completing his process within a allotted amount of time, which has been a lot of time, and they even got 3 extensions on it. But let's keep going. He said, truth is, I'm now certain that they never had any intention of making a deal, you know, punching air and blaming everybody. But instead, they wanted to force us to relinquish Canelo's belt. They didn't want to, they did. And they made Canelo look bad in the process. This is an insult to boxing, and more importantly, an insult to the boxing fans of the world. This decision validates already existing concerns about the credibility of the IBF championship. See, Oscar De La Hoya is clearly upset because he knows probably Canelo's upset, because Canelo just said, I'm upset with fans, and I didn't know the Goldenboy promoter, Matchmaker, did this, and won't. This is just looking ugly right now. There's clearly some kind of inner turmoil going on. And now, you know, De La Hoya is publicly lashing out and blaming the IBF. But I explained this in my live stream. How can we blame the IBF in this situation when Goldenboy and De La Hoya and Canelo, between all those people that manage his career, did not follow certain processes? That's nobody else's fault but your own. You know, you have certain time frames. Everybody knows the time frames, and you did nothing. You blew them off, and then you had failed negotiations with this fighter, or this fighter wouldn't get approved because DAZN has, you know, they trying to make a profit. They don't want Canelo just fighting someone unpopular where they got to, you know, foot the bill and pay Canelo all this crazy money they offered him. And, you know, so the certain things got rejected, certain people, negotiations stalled out. This is poor planning. You know, De La Hoya saying he stands behind all Goldenboy people. This is poor planning, point blank. He said this is an insult to boxing, more importantly, insult to boxing fans of the world. This decision validates already existing concerns about the credibility of IBF championship. You know, and speaking of credibility, Canelo just became the franchise champion. So, you know, Canelo's a good fighter, but you really don't want to talk about credibility when Canelo, a lot of people think he should have more than one loss on his record, and that judges seem to coincidentally sway towards him versus anybody, you know, and favor him in the scoring. So, you know, taking a shot at IBF, people question Goldenboy's integrity when it comes to picking out judges and Canelo having all the advantages and so forth. So this is just a bad look overall to me. He said Canelo inherited a mandatory challenger by defeating Jacobs, the man who beat Derevyanchenko. Again, this has nothing to do with anything. De La Hoya is lashing out at everybody. If the IBF, I don't know how the rankings are set up, but if the IBF said that this is the highest rated person, you knew of it. Jacobs beating Derevyanchenko, Canelo didn't do it. Canelo's the champion. When you beat someone, when you unify, you inherit their problems. It's very simple. You know, you become a champion, then you receive the the championship treatment and love from the fans, but you also inherit the championship duties and responsibilities. Like, here's a unification coming up: Sean Porter and Errol Spence Jr. on Premier Boxing Champs. Very good fight. If Spence beats, Sean Porter, the WBC mandatory was Omar Figueroa versus Yordenis Ugas. They just fought on the Pacquiao Thurman card. Yordenis Ugas schooled Omar Figueroa, beat him easily. He's the WBC mandatory. So once again, if Errol Spence defeats the WBC champion Sean Porter, he collects that belt, and Yordenis Ugas becomes his mandatory again. He was already his mandatory for the IBF. Now he's his mandatory because he lost to Sean Porter. Now he fought in an eliminator. So that's the same exact scenario, like almost to the T. Errol Spence, if he beats Sean Porter, that's a unification. So even though Sean Porter beat Yordenis Ugas, that don't got shit to do with Errol Spence beating Ugas. They're not one and the same. So that's not how rankings work. The WBC has classified Yordenis Ugas versus Omar Figueroa before, on the Pacquiao Thurman card as an eliminator for the mandatory spot with the WBC. So it doesn't matter if Errol Spence defeats Sean Porter, who defeated Yordenis Ugas. And this is just a sidebar. Some people thought Sean Porter lost that fight, but on paper, he won the fight. Sean Porter beat Ugas. So even if Spence beats Ugas, that don't have shit to do with Spence. He's going to get ordered to fight Ugas. So once again, I don't know why Goldenboy and Canelo seem to have this type of prima donna notion that Canelo is above this. Yes, Canelo fought Danny Jacobs. The fight, to me, turned out to be close towards the end. Canelo tapered off. Canelo won fair and square, cool. But Jacobs beating Derevyanchenko, what does that have to do with anything? Derevyanchenko's still a player. He fought Jack Kukule or whoever else. He stayed in the rankings. And you beat Jacobs. You took his belt. And in doing so, you got the belt. You got the sanctioning fees and everything and the adoration, everything that comes with it. And now you have a mandatory that you knew about. The problem is De La Hoya and Goldenboy, they're lashing out at everyone except for themselves. They did this. If you have a mandatory, you have to go through the proper channels by the certain dates to let them know, hey, Canelo's leg is injured. Because they said Canelo has they said he has knee injuries. So maybe he could have got an IBF extension and said, hey, but you didn't fill out the paperwork. That's your fucking fault. You could have filled out the paperwork, said Canelo's having knee troubles and he's no longer fighting in September. Can we get an extension on this Derevyanchenko thing? You didn't do that by the certain date. That's your fault. This is poor planning and execution. If Goldenboy would have done that, or if they said, hey, we're fighting Andrade for Undisputed, give us a break and, cut us some slack because we're fighting a bigger fight in the unification for Undisputed, before he became a franchise champion. But the problem is they didn't plan none of this. So they started like playing it by ear, and it is showing. They didn't have like a dedicated plan. So now this didn't happen. The zone didn't approve this person. Kovalev negotiations fizzled out. Derevyanchenko fizzled out. Now they upset. That's not how that works. It says it's unfair. So to strip him of the title without giving him enough time to make the best fight possible is truly what is wrong with boxing. And I plan to aggressively consider all legal actions possible. Listen, in my opinion, the zone people, promoters, they got to stop threatening to sue everybody. There's a time and a place. I understand lawsuits come, but new media, man, people got to stop threatening to sue. What are you going to sue the IBF for? Right? What are you going to sue them for? For following their own rules? For having it spelled out? How can you? They try to sue Al Heyman. Goldenboy got that case dismissed. Eddie Hearns threatened to sue the WBC if Dillian White didn't get a shot. Then Dillian White fails a drug test with UCAD for an anabolic steroid. Oscar De La Hoya saying, I'm going to aggressively, just putting that extra, final sentence in. I'm going to aggressively pursue legal actions. For what? Who? What are you going to do? How you going to beat the IBF when they have it spelled out? And then I'm And it sounds like they're more organized than you. You know, they have, I guarantee you the IBF has dates, timestamps, and notifications that were sent out, because I've seen them before. You know, not in this particular situation, but I've seen the notifications that they've sent out before. You know, it'll be like, oh, you know, pursuant to IBF section 2.2, you know, the IBF has determined that Canelo is ordered to face blah, blah, blah. And then they spell it out. So they probably got the postmarks, the timestamp, everything you need. How you going to beat them in court? You know, so me, I'm not about no petty threats. That, to me, that's just corny. So I don't understand why De La Hoya is attempting to sue somebody or act like he wants to even take it there. What are you going to sue? You're going to sue the IBF for following their rules that are written out. These aren't special rules that they made to fuck Canelo over. These are the regular rules. So you look crazy. They did this to Tyson Fury. He got stripped. Gennady Golovkin got stripped. So in the court of law, if you know anything about court, the court of law, they have a better and easier time to prove and establish character that they've been following their rules. And no matter how big or little of a star you are, if you don't follow their rules, then you're getting clapped, you know, you're getting stripped and you're going to be forced to relinquish your belt. De La Hoya, what is he going to say? Oh, we were trying to get Jaime Munguia fight and DAZN didn't approve it. So then we bounced in clout chase Demetrius Andrade and Caleb Smith and never sent them an offer. Then we were in deep negotiations with Main Event Kovalev, and then we couldn't agree on the money. And then that fell out. Now Kovalev's fighting Anthony Yard. And then we came back to the Derevyanchenko. You did all of this. You burned up so much time in a failed effort with Kovalev, you know, because to me, I think that was the negotiations that got the farthest, but ultimately it fell apart over money. So this is looking real shaky for Goldenboy, Team Canelo, and DAZN. How did Eddie Hearn come through the gates with DAZN and say they got $1 billion budget and, you know, they're taking over American Takeover and pay-per-views dead? And between Derevyanchenko and Kovalev, the biggest star in boxing, Canelo, fights are falling apart at the negotiating table, on the cutting room floor, over money, people feeling lowballed. You know, what's up with that? How come this never happened with Floyd Mayweather? Floyd picks you, you know, gets in the negotiating room with you and your people, fights happen. You know, how come they can't get Canelo and Kovalev if that's the fight that they wanted? You know, so again, what are you going to sue the IBF for? Mike Coppinger, you know, shout out to him. He said the same thing. Look, IBF rules plainly laid out. They ordered a fight between Canelo and Derevyanchenko. Goldenboy Promotions didn't ask for an exception. Purse bid was ordered. There was no deal by the deadline. Both sides agreed to a side deal where if Canelo would be stripped if there was no deal by the deadline. And it already got extended 3 times, still no deal. Therefore, he got stripped. The rules are rules. See, the thing is, this is not like the WBC. They were at one point not in the good graces with Canelo Alvarez. So I think they're at a point where, you know, they don't want to piss Canelo off. So they might be more lenient to Canelo. So Canelo is upset because his A-side stature is not carrying him, you know, to be above the law. He's being held to a standard of a champion and being held to the rule set that is already in place, and they're not bending it for him. That's what it seems like is the bigger problem. Again, poor planning from Team Canelo and Goldenboy, and now they're upset about it. That's what's wrong. And again, to say it's unfair, but then throw your matchmaker under the bus and say he signed a side deal that I had no knowledge of. The lines of communication between you and your team need to be improved. But, you know, De La Hoya lashing out on the IBF and standing by Roberto Diaz and Canelo outing him, these all aren't good signs. To me, this shows you what I've been telling you, new media. There's clearly something going on between, you know, Canelo, what he wants to do, what Goldenboy wants to do, DAZN, and their wires are crossed. They simply have to get on the same page because it's obvious that not all parties are on the same page, but you have no one to blame but your own team and not doing the proper execution of certain things. How can you not request an exception and then be mad at somebody else? You didn't request an exception. Kell Brook did. with the IBF, and he got it. He says, I fought Golovkin and I messed up my eye. You know, my eye was all banged up. So as a result, I won't be able to fight my mandatory Errol Spence within the allotted time. So as a result, I'm requesting an exception. Right? And then they granted it. But if you don't do that, and you know, Canelo's on vacation, go look at his page. He on vacation. He was in Monaco just go look at his page, his social media. You know, if you don't go through the process, see, again, PBC, Top Rank's been in the business. Aram's been in the business. He don't do this to his fighters. Like, you notice the thing with Luke Campbell and Lomachenko. Lomachenko, he got the unification over Devin Haney, who was thought to have been in line for that, because Bob Arum obviously knows how to wiggle, and he obviously knows the rules, and he knows the sanctioning bodies and these various things. So he made it happen for his fighter. That's it. Look, Goldenboy president Eric Gomez chimes in on the IBF's decision to strip Canelo. Robert Diaz did nothing wrong. The IBF has been unfair to Canelo since he won the title in May. De La Hoya and I stand by Robert 1000%. But I don't get what they're saying. How? How is this like the IBF is targeting Canelo? I don't get. The same thing happened to Goldenboy. I mean, to Triple G last year. How? What is Eric Gomez and De La Hoya? What are they lashing out the IBF for? Did you or did you not pursue multiple other options before you even got in talks with Derevyanchenko? The fact is, you got in talks with Derevyanchenko too little, too late, to the point where you couldn't, negotiate it. But also, in my honest opinion, it could be a power move for Al Haymon, because Derevyanchenko is an Al Haymon fighter. So he knew the rules. Al Haymon, he's advising his fighter. And if Derevyanchenko didn't agree to the money, by the certain deadline, or Canelo and Derevyanchenko, I guess you could say, their teams couldn't agree on the money, then it would go to a purse bid auction. De La Hoya, they allowed Canelo to get stripped as opposed to going to the purse bid, because they feared losing the purse bid to Al Haymon, because then that means Al Haymon would be able to stage Canelo versus Derevyanchenko on his terms and on his networks. That's what the problem is. Nobody's saying that. Interview De La Hoya and Eric Gomez and Diaz about that. Derevyanchenko, let me repeat this, is an Al Haymon fighter. Canelo didn't have to get stripped. He didn't have to do this side deal with the Robert Diaz, the Goldenboy matchmaker. They did it because they knew they could not allow this fight to get to a purse bid auction, because then it would be up for grabs and Al Haymon could potentially outbid Goldenboy and then establish and take control of this fight, the planning of it. This is just a bad look. Just look at it. The Athletic Boxing, look what they put. From Lance Pugmire, has Oscar De La Hoya lost his golden touch with Canelo? These are the titles of articles. After talks with Derevyanchenko fell through, De La Hoya and Alvarez are in a peculiar position, and the fighter is a one belt lighter. Look at what people are saying in the industry, and look who started this. New media. Lance Pugmire, industry skepticism remains about Alvarez's interest in unifying with Andrade, with one insider pointing out, quote, they didn't think about the unification until just a few days ago as a way to keep the belt. They may not even want it now. So now they said, even though allegedly they're in deep talks to fight against Demetrius Andrade, now that he got stripped and it's a title fight in a unification, but it's not for everything, because he got stripped of, he still would have to get the WBC from Charlo. To me, I don't care about no franchise shit. And he would have to get the IBF now from Derevyanchenko, Golovkin, most likely. This is a bad look, man. This is poor plan. This is your team. Is this your king? Look, Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated, plus he works for DAZN. Canelo was extremely upset that Goldenboy couldn't close a deal with Sergey Kovalev. Per sources, Canelo had made it clear that is who he wanted to fight, going as far as to communicate that to officials working with Kovalev through his inner circle. So now, you know, it looks like Canelo's upset with Goldenboy in general because he's looking crazy in these streets. He keeps getting stripped of belts, and it didn't have to be all this, you know. Trouble in paradise, I tell you. I keep telling y'all, but it's really laughable that Goldenboy would even blame the IBF for their negligence and in communicating what they wanted to do and what they, you know, the problem is, again, too many chiefs, not enough Indian, like, you know, too many hands in the cookie jar. People, you know, Canelo went too many ways. He was going in too many different. This is what I told you guys. New media. This is literally what I told you guys. He going in two different Jaime Munguia, Demetrius Andrade, Caleb Smith, Triple G trilogy, Kovalev at 175. Like, we're talking about so many different things. You know, people, when they normally say so-and-so's about to fight, here's the short list, they have 2 or 3 names or something. And 2 of them are probably not likely in their filler names, and they're really honed in on one. They're talking about Canelo fighting 160-pound fighters, 54-pound Jaime Munguia, move him up. They're talking about him fighting a 168 fighter like Caleb Smith, or even 175. This is them. They were all over the place. There was no real, again, walking aimless. There was no real direction to honing in an opponent. And then again, they wasted so much time back and forth with the banter with Kovalev's people, all for Kovalev to say, hey, I can't wait no more. I got to get paid. And you guys are lowballing me. I'm fighting my mandatory Anthony Yard. He's already an established light heavyweight, and I can't hold the dogs off any longer. This is my mandatory. So Kovalev's team, Main Events, they did right by Kovalev, and Top Rank, who also represents Kovalev and ESPN and stuff now, because they were open to fighting the megastar Canelo. You know, they were open, so they heard him out. They did their due diligence to try to see if they can come up with something, fight Canelo for bigger bucks. But then when they couldn't agree on the money, and then it just kept stalling, they pulled back the reins and said, you know what, we'll just fight our mandatory. That's a good fight. We can do it in Russia, and we can dictate as champion instead of doing this prima donna shit that Goldenboy and Canelo are doing. That's the real issue, you know. So now Kovalev's in a very good fight with his mandatory, and Canelo couldn't execute, him and his team couldn't execute a deal with his mandatory, so he gets stripped. It's that simple. And this is bad for an A-side to look this out of control of what's going on in his career. Those are my thoughts. We unpack. So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.